All right. Now, strawberries and slime molds. I know you were looking at it before you clicked on it. You were like, strawberries and what? Strawberries and slime molds. Hey, what this is about is we're going to talk about how groups replicate, right? How do you go from one to many? What's the process by which a group makes more groups, all right? This is when two groups love each other very much. No, it's not that kind of replicate. But strawberries and slime molds represent the two major ways that we actually think about groups replicating. So what I was taught when I was growing up was this real simple model. And the idea is that you've got a group, right? Oh, we've got like 5 people in our group. And then the group gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. Eventually there's like 14 people in the group. And that's starting to get to be too many, right? Because what happens is, you know this. I can show it to you mathematically, but you know it as well. That the more people you have in the group, the more... the harder it is to actually get to know everybody in the group. Because if you have one person in the group, you have what? You have 0 relationships. If you have 2 people in the group, so 1. If you have 2 people in the group, you have 1 relationship. If you have 3 people in the group, adding 1 person adds 2 relationships. Now all of a sudden 3 people equals 3 relationships. If you add a 4th person, you're adding 3 relationships. So adding a 4th person takes it up to 6. And what happens is, you guys did high school math, right? I don't need to explain this to you. What happens is that as the number of people in the group goes up in a linear scale, the number of relationships in the group goes up in an exponential scale. And so what happens when there's too many relationships for us to actually keep track of, then the group starts feeling too big. And where that starts to happen is 8, 10, 12, depending on what your threshold is. That's about as big as a small group can be and still be small. Now, a group can be good and be a mid-sized group or whatever. But in terms of a small group, once it gets above that size, it starts feeling a little bit large. So how do we split it? How do we break it apart? How do we get it so that we get more groups out of it? So what I was taught is what's going to happen is kind of like cellular. It's mitosis, right? The mitosis model. You got this cell. We're going to call it a cell group. Right? And what's going to happen is it's got like a nucleus, and that's like the small group leader. And then what's going to happen is the nucleus is going to form another nucleus, and it's going to kind of divide here. And what's going to happen is we're actually going to have 2 different cells, right? And so this thing was maybe it got up to like 14 to 16 people. We're going to start 2 new groups with like 8 people in them with a new leader, right? That's a really big leader there. And then what's going to happen is they're both going to go through this same process, and we're going to get 4 groups, and it's just going to be awesome, and the kingdom is expanding, and it's unstoppable. So this looks so good on paper, and it makes so much sense. The problem is it almost never works. Very rarely have I seen this work. A couple times in my life I've seen it work. Almost never does this work as a regular thing. And I used to think that I was a bad small group pastor because I couldn't get this to work. I was a bad small group leader because I couldn't get this to work. I'd start a group, right? And it's awesome and it's great. And then I get a small group, I get an apprentice, right? And I train them and I send them out. And what would happen would be one of 2 things. And this is basically why it doesn't work. Because in a cell, you can't tell which one's the original and which one's the new, right? It's actually divided into 2. But with a group, you always know who the original group is, right? And so the groups that are made are not equal. So what I kept experiencing was, I didn't mean to delete that guy. What I kept experiencing was, we split the thing in half, right? But then some of the people over here, now sometimes people were trying to get into my group, and sometimes people have tried to get out of my group. So I've been on both sides of this. But some of the people over here are like, really, the new group meets on Tuesday night, and the old group meets on Wednesday. We kind of got shuffled into the new, but we'd really like to slip back into the old group. Right? Or, our commute really doesn't allow. And so what happens is we took our group, and then eventually this thing has leaked enough people that the leader's like, well, screw it, I'm out. Right? And then so I had 14 people. I made 2 groups of 8. Then half of them came back over here. And so now we have a group of 12, and then this thing just stopped. And so this like cellular division mitosis thing, this is a great way to take a group of 14 people and make it into a group of 12. Right? It's not actually usually a great way to expand your groups for the kingdom. And so I thought a lot about that because I'm like, well, this is what a natural model is. This is how it works in nature, right? And what I came to realize is that generally, that's not actually how it works in nature. In terms of mature organisms, there's only a couple organisms that actually reproduce this way. And those pretty much are slime molds and amoebas, right? Now, I don't know what your theology of the body of Christ is, but it should not surprise me that replication strategies for slime molds and amoebas are not actually useful replication strategies in the body of Christ, right? Because that's not the kind of body we have. You don't say to your wife, you don't say to your husband, or you don't see people saying, I really wish we could have more children, right? I do too. Let's cut off an arm and plant it in the soil. That would be traumatic. That would be painful. That would be awful. And a lot of people, when you start talking about small group replication, that's what they think. They think traumatic, painful, awful. I used to have friends. The church made me give away my friends and go get new friends. I don't want to get new friends. Right? Now, for me, I'm an extrovert. I could be in a new group every week and be like, hey, this is fun. We're having fun. My wife is an introvert. She's like, no, I would just quit. It's not worth it to me to try and I want to make some friends. I want to make deep friendships. I want to build deep community. I'm not interested in this surface level stuff. So this, what I call slime mold replication strategy, maybe you can make it work, but generally speaking, it's very difficult to make that work over the long term. What actually works? Well, consider the strawberry. All right, this is how strawberries work. You set up a planter in your backyard, right? You're going to do some raised bed gardening. You get some 2x6s, and you build yourself a bed right here. You got to Sam's Club at the end of the season. You buy a bunch of strawberry plants, and you got little strawberry plants, and you kind of put them in here. Right? You put 4 strawberry plants in your planter. You come back next year, you got maybe 2 years, right? You got strawberry plants all over this place. They're just like popping up. They're not even that neat, but they're just they're all over the place. You think, how did that happen? Because with strawberries, they got those little seeds. Those plants aren't growing off strawberry seeds. They're not seeding, and nor and you can actually split strawberries up, but it's not the way you would normally do it, right? You're not like cutting and doing plantings and cuttings of strawberries and planting them all over the place. No, the strawberry reproduces naturally because that's what strawberries do. Well, how did they do it? What they send out, what you have is you have a little, let's say this is your ground and this is your, put little strawberry leaves or more like that, right? That's your strawberry plant. I know it's not a great strawberry plant. What the strawberry plant does, how does it reproduce? It's not like an oak tree where it drops seeds, nuts on the ground that reproduce. That's not what the strawberry does. The way strawberry plants generally reproduce is through something that's called a stolon. Now that doesn't mean stolen like that something was there's theft involved. Stolen is the Greek word that means sent, right? We actually use that word all the time. We call it, in the Greek, apostolon means the ones who are sent, the apostles. Like what the Greek is actually talking about is sending people out in pretty much the same way that strawberry plants send people out. They send out a little runner, right? And it comes over here, and all of a sudden, it starts a new little strawberry plant. Right? And then they send out another runner over here. And all of a sudden we get a new little strawberry plant. And what happens is that all over our little, if you were actually to go in and try and lift a strawberry plant out, what you find is it's not one little plant, it's a network of plants, right? Because what's happened is it has sent out, the strawberry plant in your little raised planter sends out apostles. And so this is actually what I want for your group. I don't want to break your group up. I don't want it to get to a certain size, and I'm not going to come in and say, okay, now half of you have to meet on Tuesday night and half have to meet on Wednesday night. Half of you have to stop meeting here. Like, I'm not going to do that. My parents were in the same small group from when I was 5 years old till I was 17. And the benefit that came from having the longevity of that group was so beneficial to me, and it was so beneficial to my parents and everybody in that group. And they still get together every year, even though we don't all live in the same state now. They still get together every year and go, one of them's got a cabin, they go to a cabin and play board games, and those relationships continue to this day. Relationships that started when I was 5 years old. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. That was a long time ago, all right? And so what I want is not to break up your group and to have it hopefully respawn like a weird starfish. What I want is for your group to, at some point, somebody in the group says, man, I really would like to do a group with so-and-so. I really would like to be in, I'm gonna start a men's group, or I'm gonna start, this is what happened in my parents' small group, is most of those people ended up being in multiple groups. They went out and started new groups. They just didn't leave the one they were in, right? There might be somebody in your group that says, man, I really want to do a Bible study at my workplace. Man, I really would like to maybe invest in some, the next generation. I'm going to work with, young adults or with teenagers. Or I've got these people in my neighborhood. I've been wanting to do something with them. So don't try to break up a healthy thing and cut limbs off. Instead, think about what would it look like if we were to send out stolen, right? If we were to send out apostolon, if we were to send out apostles from your group to go start new things, what would that look like? And you as a small group leader, that's what I want from you, is not that you're cutting things in half. We're not winning by division, right? What I want to know is how are we multiplying? Who are you sending out to do the work? So that's it. That's strawberries and slime molds. Don't be a slime mold, be a strawberry, all right? And that's how I want you to think about replicating and reproducing your small group. Thanks, guys.